I did not know my marriage was already over. Not because we argued, not because we stopped loving each other, but because, without asking me, my husband had already decided what belonged to him, what belonged to his mother, and what no longer belonged to me. I only found out when he said it out loud in front of my father. It happened at my family dinner, a monthly gathering at my father's house in Surrey, the kind of place where nothing ever looks out of place. Perfect table settings, warm lights, soft voices, respectable smiles. And yet, the moment I stepped inside, something was already wrong. I had arrived in a taxi. Rain still clung to the hem of my dress. My hair was slightly damp. My shoes were marked with mud from the driveway. Around me, the rest of the family arrived in their cars, clean, dry, untouched by the weather. My father looked at me for a long moment. Not angry, not suspicious, just confused. "Emily," he said gently, "why did you come in a taxi?" I opened my mouth to answer, but my husband spoke first. He did not stand up. He did not look at me. He continued cutting his food as if discussing something ordinary. "That car belongs to my mother now," he said. "She needed it more." The room fell silent. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not shock, not disbelief, but understanding. Because in that single sentence, I realized something I had refused to see for years. I was not his wife. I was a resource. And in that moment, my father did something that would change everything. He did not raise his voice. He did not defend me. He did not even argue. He simply fell silent. And that silence destroyed my husband's life. Before we go any further, pause for 1 second. If you want to know how one calm decision turned a proud man into a stranger overnight, comment number 1 below and stay with me, because what happened next was not loud, it was precise. Before that night, there was nothing about my marriage that looked dramatic. If you had asked anyone around us, they would have said we were normal, comfortable, stable. We lived in a quiet neighborhood, a respectable house, nothing extravagant, nothing suspicious. Oliver never raised his voice. He never hit me. He never insulted me in front of others. That is why it took me so long to understand what was wrong, because our marriage did not break loudly, it wore down quietly. At first it was small things, things that did not seem worth mentioning, like how decisions were made. Oliver would say things like, "I have already sorted it," or "I thought this would be easier." He never asked. He informed. If I hesitated, he would smile and add, "It's just practical," or "Mum agrees with me," and somehow that always ended the conversation. His mother was never openly cruel. She did not shout. She did not threaten. She simply existed in every decision. What we ate, where we went, how money was used. If I suggested something different, Oliver would pause, then say, "Mum wouldn't like that," as if that settled the matter. Slowly, without noticing, I stopped suggesting things at all. Money was another quiet shift. I had always been careful with finances, not because I was stingy, but because I liked knowing where things stood. Oliver, on the other hand, treated money as something that appeared when needed. If a bill was paid, he did not ask how. If a purchase was made, he did not check whose account it came from. He would say, "It's our money," and smile as if that was generous. Sometimes I noticed charges I did not recognize. Small ones, then bigger ones. When I asked, Oliver would shrug. "It was necessary," or "Mum needed help." There was always a reason, and I always accepted it, because nothing felt extreme enough to argue about. There were no bruises, No screaming matches, no obvious betrayals, just a steady feeling that my role was slowly shrinking. I remember one afternoon very clearly. We were at a family lunch. Nothing formal, just sandwiches and tea. Margaret mentioned how inconvenient her old car had become, how uncomfortable it was, how embarrassing even. Oliver laughed and said, "Don't worry, Mum, we'll sort something out." He did not look at me when he said it. He did not wait for my response. I smiled politely, sipped my tea, and felt something tighten in my chest. That evening, I asked him what he meant. Oliver waved it away. "It's nothing." "Mum just needs support." I asked, "Support from who?" He looked at me then, briefly, almost surprised. "From us, obviously." That word, us, sat heavily in the room, because by then I already knew what it meant. Us did not mean partnership. It meant access. There were moments like that everywhere. Oliver would choose holidays without asking, invite people over without telling me, promise help without checking if we could give it. If I hesitated, he would say, "You're overthinking," or worse, "You're being difficult." And so I stopped hesitating. I became very good at adapting, at smoothing things over, at telling myself that this was just how marriages worked, that this was compromise, that this was maturity. After all, Oliver was not unkind. He brought me tea when I was tired. He remembered birthdays. He held my hand in public. And yet, somehow, I felt less and less visible. I noticed it in small humiliations, like when Margaret would rearrange my kitchen without asking, or comment on my choices with a smile that was almost kind, or when Oliver would correct me in front of others, not sharply, just enough to remind me where I stood. No one would have called it abuse, but I felt it. The slow erosion of being considered, the quiet replacement of my voice. Looking back now, the signs were everywhere. I just did not want to see them, because admitting the truth would have meant admitting that my marriage was not safe. It was simply convenient, for everyone except me. Margaret was never the kind of woman people warned you about. She did not shout. She did not interfere openly. She did not demand. In fact, when I first met her, I thought she was polite, traditional, proud of her family in a harmless way. She smiled often. She praised me in front of others. She liked to hold my hand a little too long when introducing me. "This is Emily," she would say. "My son is very lucky." People would smile. I would smile too. At first it sounded kind, but over time I realized something about the way Margaret spoke. Every compliment carried a quiet comparison. Every smile came with a balance sheet. At family gatherings, she loved to talk about appearances. Who had renovated their kitchen? Who had changed their car? Who was going on holiday where? She would lean closer to me and say softly, "You know, Emily, not everyone gets to live the way you do. You are very fortunate." I never knew how to answer that, because it was never said with gratitude. It was said with ownership. Margaret liked to remind people of her son's achievements. "Oliver works so hard. He carries so much responsibility. He takes care of everyone." She said these things often, especially when Oliver was not listening. When he was present, she would look at him proudly and say, "My son has always been generous. He never forgets his family." Slowly, the picture became clear. In her story, Oliver was the provider, the pillar, the source, and I was the fortunate one who benefited. Sometimes she would laugh lightly and say, "Emily is lucky. She married into security. Not like how things were for me." There was no bitterness in her voice, just certainty. It took me a while to realize that in her mind, my comfort was not something I had built. It was something I had received from her son, and therefore something that could be shared. The shift happened gradually. At first it was small. She would admire something in our home, a lamp, a piece of furniture, a kitchen appliance. "Oh, this is lovely," she would say, "very tasteful. You know, this would look wonderful in my house." I laughed it off. Then one day she said it differently. "Oliver said we could move this if needed." She did not ask me, she informed me. When I looked at Oliver, he avoided my eyes, smiled, and said, "It's just temporary." Temporary became familiar. Margaret never took without permission. She simply assumed permission existed. She would talk about money the same way. She never asked directly. She framed everything as concern. Prices are so high these days. It's hard for pensioners. You young people are more flexible. If I stayed silent, she continued. If I nodded, she took that as agreement. Oliver would always support her logic. "Mum has struggled enough. We can help." Help sounded noble, but it was never discussed, never measured, never limited. At social events, Margaret's favourite subject was comparison. She would lower her voice and say, "Did you see what Claire was wearing? So flashy. No class." Then she would look at me and smile. "You are much more sensible, Emily." That word again, sensible. It was not a compliment. It was permission. Permission to expect restraint from me. Silence. Acceptance. At church gatherings, she would speak loudly enough for others to hear. "My son takes such good care of us. He makes sure I never feel left behind." People would nod approvingly. No one asked how. No one asked with what. And I did not speak, because I was still telling myself that this was normal, that this was family, that this was respect for elders. I remember one afternoon when Margaret said something that stayed with me. We were having tea, just the two of us. She looked around my living room and said calmly, "You know, Emily, everything you have now will one day support the whole family. That's how it works." She smiled, as if she had explained a universal truth. I did not argue. I did not question her, but something inside me went very still, because in that moment I understood that in Margaret's world, boundaries did not exist. There was only access, and the more I stayed silent, the more that access felt permanent. If any moment in this story feels uncomfortably familiar, leave a 1 in the comments. Looking back, the most dangerous part was not what they took. It was how naturally it happened. Nothing was ever announced. Nothing was ever argued over. Things were simply used. At first, it was always temporary. Oliver would say, "Mum is just borrowing it. We'll get it back." A weekend, a few days, just until things settle. That phrase became familiar. Just until. My laptop was used once, then again, so I stopped asking where it was. My car keys were missing some mornings. Oliver would say, "Mum needed to run errands. It made sense." And somehow it always did, because nothing was ever framed as a demand. It was framed as logic. When I hesitated, Oliver never pushed. He would tilt his head slightly and say, "Why are you making this a problem? It's not a big deal." Those words worked better than anger. They made me feel unreasonable, small, so I learned to adjust. I began checking myself before speaking, asking whether something was worth mentioning, whether it would create tension. Most of the time, I decided it would not. I remember the first time I realized something of mine had been given away without my knowledge. It was a coat, a good one, something I'd bought for myself. Margaret appeared wearing it at a family gathering. She smiled when she saw my face. "Oh, Oliver said you wouldn't mind. It suits me, doesn't it?" People laughed. I laughed too, because the alternative felt worse. That was how it worked. If I stayed silent, things remained pleasant. If I spoke, I became difficult. So I stayed silent. Decisions followed the same pattern. Holidays were booked, guests were invited, plans were changed. I was informed, not included. Oliver would say, "I assumed you'd be fine with it. You usually are." That sentence stayed with me. You usually are. It was said kindly, almost affectionately, but it erased me. I started preparing myself in advance, lowering expectations, letting go of preferences. If something mattered to me, I asked myself why. Was it necessary? Was it selfish? Was it worth disturbing the peace? Most of the time, I decided it was not. I told myself this was marriage, that compromise meant flexibility, that love meant understanding, and so I became very understanding. I adjusted my routines, my spending, my tone. I made space, constantly. And every time I did, the space I occupied became smaller. I noticed it one evening while clearing out a cupboard. Half of the shelves no longer held my things. They held items I did not recognize, things that had slowly migrated from somewhere else. I stood there longer than necessary, holding an object I did not remember owning, and felt something tighten in my chest. Not anger, recognition, because I finally saw the pattern. Nothing was taken all at once. Everything was absorbed. My belongings, my opinions, my presence, all folded quietly into something that was no longer mine. The boundaries had not been crossed, they had dissolved, and I had helped them dissolve by saying yes when I meant maybe, by staying quiet when I felt uneasy, by calling discomfort maturity. Oliver never saw this as a problem. When I tried to explain once, carefully, he looked confused. "You're reading too much into it. We're a family." Family. That word had become a cover for everything. It justified access. It dismissed consent. It blurred ownership. And the more often it was used, the harder it became to question. I began to feel like a guest in my own life, welcomed but replaceable. Nothing belonged to me in a way that felt permanent. Not my time, not my space, not even my silence. The most unsettling part was how calm everything looked from the outside. No one would have said I was unhappy. I was composed, polite, reasonable. But inside something was constantly alert. A quiet sense that if I did not hold on to myself carefully, there would be nothing left to hold. That was when I realized the truth. This was not generosity. It was not family closeness. It was a system. And I was slowly being trained to disappear inside it. The family dinner that night was supposed to be ordinary. It was the kind of gathering that happened so often it no longer carried excitement. Predictable, comforting, safe. My father hosted it every month at his house in Surrey, a habit he never broke, not even after my mother passed away. He believed family routines kept people close, grounded. The house looked exactly as it always did, the gravel driveway freshly swept, the lights warm behind the windows, the front door open, welcoming. When I arrived, it was already raining. Not heavily, just enough to soak the edges of everything. The taxi stopped at the gate. I paid quickly, stepped out, and stood there for a moment, adjusting my coat, holding my bag a little higher than usual. I could see the other cars already parked inside, neatly aligned, clean, dry. I walked in, slowly. Each step across the gravel felt louder than it should have. The rain tapped softly against the stones, against my shoes, against the hem of my dress. When I reached the door, I paused, straightened my back, smoothed my hair. Then I went inside. The room was already full. Voices overlapped politely, cutlery clinked. Someone laughed at the right volume. Oliver was there, seated, relaxed, his chair pulled slightly back, as if he had been there for a while. The seat beside him was empty. No one rushed to greet me. No one questioned my arrival. I took my place quietly. My father noticed immediately. He always did. His eyes moved from my face to my coat, from my shoes to the damp fabric near my ankles. He did not smile at first. He waited. Only when the conversation lulled naturally did he speak. "Emily," he said gently, "you came by taxi?" His voice was calm, curious, unaccusing. The room slowed, not silent, just attentive. I felt every pair of eyes shift, not sharply, just enough. I opened my mouth. I was about to say something simple, something smooth, something that would not raise questions. But I did not get the chance. Oliver spoke before I could. He did not look at me. He did not pause his meal. He said it the way one mentions the weather. "That car belongs to my mother now." There was a brief pause, not shock, not outrage, just a delay, as if the sentence needed time to settle. Oliver continued, "She needed it more." It made sense. His tone was casual, reasonable, almost helpful. For a moment, no one reacted. I felt my chest tighten, not suddenly, gradually. I looked at my father. His expression did not change, not visibly. He looked at Oliver, then back at me, then at Oliver again, slowly. I realized then that this was not a misunderstanding, not a joke, not a poor choice of words. This was a decision, already made, already accepted. I lowered my gaze, not because I was ashamed of the taxi, but because I did not want to meet anyone's eyes. The silence stretched. Someone cleared their throat. Someone shifted in their seat. Oliver smiled faintly, as if relieved the explanation was finally out. My father did not raise his voice. He did not challenge Oliver. He did not ask for details. He simply asked one question. "And when was this decided?" Oliver shrugged. "It just happened." Just happened. Those two words echoed in my head. My father nodded once, very slowly. He reached for his glass, took a small sip. The conversation resumed, cautiously. Someone changed the subject. Someone commented on the food. But nothing felt the same. I sat very still, aware of every movement, every sound. The rain continued outside, soft, persistent. I watched Oliver eat, watched him laugh when his cousin spoke, watched him lean back comfortably in his chair, as if nothing significant had occurred, as if nothing had shifted. I realized then that whatever this moment was, it did not belong to me anymore. It belonged to the people who had decided without me, who spoke for me, who used what was mine and called it practical. I did not cry. I did not argue. I simply sat there and waited, because something in the air had changed, not violently, not dramatically, but permanently. After Oliver spoke, no one reacted. No one laughed. No one objected. No one defended me. For a moment, it felt as if the room had decided to pretend nothing had happened. Cutlery moved again. A glass was lifted. Someone commented quietly on the food. No one said anything. No one argued. I sat very still. I could feel my heartbeat in my ears, steady and loud, while everything else remained calm. Too calm. My father did not respond. He did not ask for clarification. He did not correct Oliver. He did not look around the table for agreement. He simply remained where he was, seated, composed. If anyone had been watching him closely, they might have noticed how still he became, how deliberate every movement was. But no one was watching him. Everyone was watching Oliver. Oliver seemed relaxed, more relaxed than before. He leaned back slightly in his chair, smiled when someone spoke to him, reached for another bite of food as if the matter had been settled. In his mind, it had. The explanation had been given, the decision accepted, the moment passed. He believed he had handled it well. I realized then how easily silence could be misunderstood. Oliver mistook it for approval, for weakness, for permission. He glanced at me once, briefly, almost kindly, as if to say, "See, it is fine." I did not return the look. I kept my eyes on my plate, on the untouched food in front of me. I said nothing. I did not defend myself. I did not ask questions. I did not explain. Because I had learned that explanations were rarely heard. They were absorbed, then dismissed. And because something in my father's stillness told me to wait, the room continued its careful rhythm. Someone poured wine. Someone cleared their throat. Someone laughed again, a little too loudly this time. No one said anything. No one argued. The silence was not empty. It was heavy. It pressed down gently but persistently. I became aware of small details. The way my father's hands rested on the table, still, flat, not clenched. The way his eyes moved slowly from face to face, taking everything in, saying nothing. The way Oliver continued to speak, confident now, expanding, explaining something unrelated, his voice warm and animated. He sounded pleased with himself, as if he had drawn a line and crossed it without consequence. I understood then that Oliver believed this moment had confirmed something, that whatever he decided would stand, that no one would challenge him, especially not me, especially not my father. I felt an urge to speak, to say something, anything, to break the quiet before it hardened, but I did not. Because the silence did not feel like neglect, it felt deliberate. My father took another sip of his drink, set the glass down carefully. No one reacted. No one said anything. No one argued. Time passed in small, measured pieces, minutes perhaps. It was hard to tell. The rain continued outside, soft, uninterrupted. I realized then how dangerous calm could be, because calm did not draw attention. It did not demand resolution. It allowed assumptions to grow. Oliver assumed this was over, that the matter had been settled, that his decision had been absorbed into the fabric of the evening. He assumed wrong. But at that moment no one corrected him, not yet. The silence held, and in that silence something was being decided, quietly, without witnesses. I did not know what it was. I only knew that whatever came next would not need to be loud, because nothing loud had ever been necessary in this family. No one said anything. No one argued, and the calm remained, waiting. Nothing happened immediately. That was the unsettling part. After the dinner ended, there was no confrontation, no raised voices, no dramatic exit. People said their goodbyes politely. Coats were collected. Doors closed softly behind them. Oliver was in a good mood. He joked on the drive home, talked about traffic, about work the next day, as if the evening had gone exactly as planned. My father did not say a word to me before I left. He hugged me briefly, warm, normal. "Get home safely," he said. Nothing more. That night I barely slept. not because I was upset, but because my mind would not stop listening. Sometime after midnight, my phone vibrated. One message. From my father. No explanation, no emotion, just a sentence. I've taken care of it. I stared at the screen for a long time. Taken care of what? I did not reply. The next morning, everything still looked the same. Oliver got dressed for work, checked his phone, finished his coffee. He seemed relaxed, confident. He kissed my cheek and said, "See you later." Nothing in his voice suggested concern. Around mid-morning, my phone rang again. This time, it was a number I did not recognize. I let it ring once, then answered. The voice on the other end was professional, neutral, careful with words. They asked for my name, then confirmed my relationship to my father. They said they were calling regarding an administrative matter. Routine, nothing urgent. They asked if I was aware of certain arrangements. I said I was not. There was a pause. Then the voice said, "That's all right. We just needed to confirm." The call ended. No explanation, no detail, just confirmation. I went about my day as usual. Laundry, emails, errands. But I noticed small interruptions. A notification that did not make sense. A service confirmation I did not remember requesting. An update that arrived without context. I did not ask questions, because something told me this was not the moment to understand, only to observe. That afternoon, Oliver called me from work. His tone was different, not panicked, not angry, just uncertain. "Did you change anything?" he asked. I asked him what he meant. He hesitated, then said, "It's probably nothing." We ended the call quickly. An hour later, he called again. This time, his voice was tighter. "They're saying there's been a review." "A review of what?" I asked. He did not answer directly. "Your dad wouldn't," he began, then stopped. I said nothing, because there was nothing to say. That evening, my father called me. His voice was calm, almost gentle. He did not ask how I was. He did not ask what I knew. He simply said, "Some things work best when they move quietly." That was all. No explanation, no reassurance. I realized then that whatever had been done had already been set in motion. It did not need my involvement. It did not need my reaction. It would unfold on its own. Oliver came home late that night, quieter than usual. He ate without appetite, checked his phone repeatedly, said very little. At one point, he looked at me as if he wanted to ask something. Then he didn't. The house felt unchanged. The furniture was the same. The walls were the same. But the air was different. Not tense, not dramatic, just adjusted. As if an invisible line had been crossed, and no one had announced it. I went to bed early. As I lay there in the dark, I thought of my father's message again. "I've taken care of it." I still did not know what it meant, but I knew one thing. Whatever had started was not meant to be loud. It was meant to be final. What would you do if you were in her place? Share your thoughts below. The next day unfolded in two places at once, quietly and very publicly. In the city centre, the shopping district was already busy. Cars queued, voices overlapped, footsteps echoed against polished stone. Margaret arrived like she always did, chin lifted, shoulders back, keys swinging deliberately in her hand. The car was parked right at the front, black, immaculate, impossible to miss. She stood beside it longer than necessary, letting people notice, letting heads turn. "This is the one I told you about," she said loudly. "My son insisted." Her friends gathered around, admiring, measuring. One of them touched the door handle, another peered inside. So spacious, so smooth. Margaret smiled, satisfied. She talked about comfort, about safety, about how important it was not to look left behind. "My son understands these things," she said. "He wouldn't let his mother struggle." Phones were already out, photos taken casually, laughter rising. Then it happened. A sound, sharp, unfamiliar. Beep. Margaret froze. She pressed the button again. Beep. Beep. A warning light flared, red, then another. The dashboard came alive, too alive. A loud alarm cut through the air. Heads turned, conversation stopped mid-sentence. Margaret laughed awkwardly. "Oh, it's probably nothing." The alarm grew louder, sharper, persistent. A mechanical voice followed, cold, clear. "Unauthorized use detected. Security protocol activated." The words echoed, once, twice. People stared. Margaret's smile faltered. She pressed the button again, and again. Nothing. The alarm did not stop. Phones were no longer discreet. They were raised openly now. Someone whispered. Someone laughed. Margaret stepped back, then forward again. "What is this nonsense?" she said, her voice higher. She tried the door. It did not open. The horn blasted suddenly, long, piercing. The sound bounced off glass and steel, filled the space. A security guard approached, slow, cautious. "Madam," he said, "is there a problem?" Margaret turned on him. "This is my car." He looked at the vehicle, at his tablet. "I'm afraid it's been flagged," he said. "Please step away." "Flagged by who?" Before he could answer, another vehicle appeared. Bright orange, loud engine, impossible to ignore. A tow truck. The crowd parted instinctively. 2 men stepped out, black uniforms, no expressions. They walked straight toward the car. Margaret's voice cracked. "You can't take this." "My son owns it." One of the men held up a folder, documents clipped neatly inside. "Company asset," he said. "Unauthorized user." The words landed hard. Company, asset, unauthorized. Margaret shook her head. "This is a mistake." The alarm continued, relentless. The men worked quickly, efficient, professional. Metal clanked, chains tightened. The car lifted slightly, just enough. Margaret lunged forward, hands shaking. "No!" Someone laughed. Someone filmed. The tow truck began to move, slowly, deliberately. As the car rolled away, the alarm cut off abruptly. Silence. Then noise, louder than before. Margaret stood frozen, her reflection staring back from the shop windows, distorted. In another part of the city, at the same time, Oliver's phone would not stop vibrating. Messages, missed calls, notifications. He was in his office, standing, then sitting, then standing again. "What do you mean, flagged?" he asked. The voice on the other end was calm, measured. "It's an administrative action, already processed." He ran a hand through his hair. "This doesn't make sense." "It does," the voice replied, "if you check the records." Oliver ended the call abruptly. He tried another number, then another. No one answered. Back at the shopping district, Margaret's friends had stepped away, slowly, carefully, phones lowered, eyes averted. One of them muttered, "I need to go." Margaret did not respond. The tow truck disappeared into traffic, taking the car with it, leaving an empty space behind. Margaret stood there, alone, the crowd dispersing. The place returned to normal, as if nothing had happened, except everyone had seen it. Back at home, I was folding laundry when my phone buzzed, a video sent by a number I did not recognize. The screen filled with shaky footage, sound first, the alarm, the horn, laughter, Margaret's voice, high, desperate. I watched silently. I did not react. I did not comment. I placed the phone face down. An hour later, Oliver came home, early, too early. He did not speak at first, dropped his keys, sat down heavily. "They took the car," he said. I continued folding. "It was public," he added. "People filmed it." I nodded once. He looked at me, searching. "You knew?" It was not a question. I met his gaze calmly. I didn't do anything, which was true. He looked away, jaw tight. Outside, a siren passed in the distance. Somewhere else, life moved on. But something had collapsed, very publicly, and everyone had heard the sound. Oliver did not calm down. He unravelled. It started quietly, a sharp breath, a long silence. His hands pressed flat against the kitchen counter, as if trying to ground himself. Then he turned toward me. His eyes were no longer confused. They were accusing. "You knew," he said again, this time louder. I did not answer. That seemed to provoke him more than any denial could have. "You knew this would happen," he continued. "You let it happen." His voice rose, not controlled, not measured, raw. I stayed where I was, still folding the last piece of laundry, slowly, deliberately. That infuriated him. "Say something," he snapped. "Do not just stand there like this is nothing." I looked up at him then, not with anger, not with fear, with exhaustion. "I did not do anything," I said calmly. That sentence shattered whatever restraint he had left. He laughed, a short, bitter sound. "That is exactly it," he shouted. "You never do anything. You sit there and let people destroy my life." My life, not ours. His voice echoed through the house, too loud, too sharp. The neighbour's television went quiet next door. Someone outside slowed their footsteps. Oliver did not care. He paced the room, running his hands through his hair, kicking a chair out of place. "My mother is humiliated," he yelled. "Do you understand that? People were filming her," he pointed at me, a finger trembling with rage. "And this is your fault." I watched him, really watched him. For the first time, I did not feel the urge to explain, or to soothe, or to take responsibility. I saw something clearly. This was not fear. This was entitlement cracking. He moved closer, too close. "Do you think you are innocent? You sat there while my family was destroyed." I took a step back, not in fear, but to breathe. He mistook that for guilt. "There it is," he said. "You know what you did." His voice changed then, lower, more dangerous. "You called your father. You set this up." I shook my head once. "No," I said. He slammed his hand against the wall. "Do not lie to me." The sound was loud enough to make me flinch, even though I did not feel afraid, because fear had been replaced by something else. Clarity. Oliver was not angry because he had been wronged. He was angry because control had slipped from his hands. He began shouting again. This time, not just at me, but at the idea of me. You think you are better than us now. You think because your father has money, you can ruin people. His words spilled out, messy, unfiltered. Every resentment he had ever hidden surfaced at once. He did not notice the front door opening, or the footsteps behind him, until a voice cut through his shouting. Oliver? My aunt stood in the doorway, frozen, eyes wide. He turned, breathing hard. She looked at me, then back at him. What is going on? Oliver did not lower his voice. Ask her, he said. She did this. He laughed again, wild. She ruined everything. The room felt suddenly smaller, crowded with witnesses. Another relative appeared behind my aunt, then another. No one interrupted him. They did not need to. He was exposing himself. I trusted you, he shouted at me. I gave you everything. I almost smiled at that. Everything. He meant access, not care. He meant permission, not partnership. You used me, he continued. You watched while my mother was dragged away like a criminal. Dragged away. He said it like a headline, like a story he wanted people to believe. I spoke then, quietly, clearly. Your mother used what was not hers. The words landed like a spark. Oliver lunged forward. Shut up! My father's voice came from behind him, cold, controlled. That is enough. Oliver froze. Slowly he turned. My father stood there, not angry, not raised, just finished. Oliver opened his mouth, then closed it. For the first time he did not know what to say, but his eyes never left me. Not with regret, not with understanding, with blame, as if in his mind I would always be the culprit, even as everything he had built collapsed under the weight of his own choices. If you want to see how this story ends, type "continue" in the comments. The decisions were delivered without anger. That was what made them final. My father did not raise his voice. He did not lecture. He did not explain himself at length. He waited until Oliver finished speaking, until the room settled, until everyone was listening. Then he spoke. Oliver, he said calmly, this situation has moved beyond family. Oliver straightened, as if those words alone demanded respect. My father continued, unhurried. You have been using company assets without authorization. You have represented yourself as entitled to things that were never yours. Oliver opened his mouth to protest. My father lifted one hand slightly. Not a threat, a signal. The room stayed quiet. This morning, my father said, your employment was formally reviewed. Oliver frowned, confused, still confident. My father's voice did not change. The review is complete. A pause. Your position has been terminated. No emphasis, no dramatic pause, just information. Oliver laughed once, short, disbelieving. You cannot be serious. My father nodded. I am. He reached into his jacket pocket, removed a folded document, placed it gently on the table. Your access was revoked as of 5 o'clock. Your company benefits end today. Oliver stared at the paper, did not touch it. The room felt smaller. My father went on. The vehicle you arrived in is a company car. It will be returned. Oliver finally spoke. You cannot just take everything. My father looked at him, not coldly, not warmly, accurately. I am not taking anything. I am reclaiming what was never given. The words landed softly and cut deeply. My father turned slightly. Keys, please. Oliver hesitated, then laughed again, louder this time. This is absurd. No one joined him. Slowly, his hand moved to his pocket. He placed the keys on the table. The sound they made was quiet, final. My father nodded once. There is one more matter. Oliver looked up, eyes sharp now, wary. The house you are currently living in, my father said, is not your marital residence. I felt Oliver stiffen. It belongs to a family trust. You were permitted to stay there as my son-in-law. My father paused. That permission no longer applies. Silence. No gasp, no reaction, just the weight of the sentence. You will vacate the property, my father continued, by the end of the week. Oliver stood up abruptly. This is illegal. My father did not react. All documentation will be provided. You may consult legal counsel. The calmness was disarming. Oliver looked around the room, searching for support, agreement, sympathy. There was none. He turned to me. You are letting him do this. I met his eyes and said nothing, because there was nothing left to negotiate. My father spoke again. Emily will remain where she is. You will make alternative arrangements. Oliver's breathing changed, faster, shallower. This is your fault, he said to me, quietly now. My father corrected him. No. Oliver looked at him. This is the result of your choices. No accusation, no insult, just cause and effect. My father stepped back, as if the matter were concluded. That is all. He did not wait for a response. The conversation ended not with shouting, but with absence. Oliver stood there, keys gone, job gone, home gone. Nothing dramatic had happened, and yet everything had. I watched him gather his coat, slowly, deliberately. He did not look at me again. The door closed behind him, softly. No one spoke. The house returned to its quiet state. Later that evening, my phone buzzed. A message from an unfamiliar number. Collection scheduled tomorrow. No further details. The next day, the driveway was empty. The car was gone. By the end of the week, Oliver's things were gone too. Boxes removed, drawers emptied. The house felt lighter, not happier, just clear. My father visited once more. He stood in the doorway. Are you all right? He asked. I nodded. He did not hug me. He did not say more. He trusted silence, as he always had, because in this family, judgment was never loud. It was precise, and once delivered, it could not be undone. Oliver left the house without a plan. That was the first thing he did not realize. He stepped outside, expecting instinct to carry him, habit, routine. The same systems that had always worked before. The rain had started again. Not dramatic, just persistent. He stood at the end of the driveway and pulled out his phone. Uber. The screen loaded, then froze. Searching for drivers. Nothing. He refreshed. Again. A message appeared. No pickup available in this area. He frowned. Tried again. Same result. The house sat behind him, warm, lit, unreachable. He walked further down the road. Signal improved. He tried again. Request failed. He swore under his breath. Normally a driver arrived within minutes. Normally he did not wait in the rain. He checked the map, zoomed out. The nearest public road was over a mile away. He started walking. At first he told himself it was temporary, just until he figured things out. His shoes were not made for rain. Leather soaked through quickly. Water crept in with every step. Cars passed him, lights flashing briefly, then gone. No one slowed down. Halfway down the road, his phone buzzed. A notification. Payment method declined. He stopped walking, opened the app, checked settings, tried another card. Declined. He stared at the screen, refreshed, tried again. Declined. He felt something tighten in his chest. He opened his banking app. The balance loaded slowly. £147.32. That was it. He had never memorized that number before, never needed to. The rain intensified, his jacket darkened, cold seeped in. He continued walking. By the time he reached the main road, his trousers were damp at the knees, his hair clung to his forehead. A bus passed, full. Another followed, did not stop. He stood there longer than he expected. When the next bus finally arrived, he climbed on without looking up. He tapped his card. Beep. The driver looked at him, expression neutral. "Card's not going through," he said. Oliver tried again. Beep. A pause. People behind him shifted, sighed. He stepped aside, let others pass, fumbled for cash. He counted. Notes damp, coins sticky. Enough. The bus moved on. He sat down heavily, breathing hard, feeling watched. At the next stop, he got off. The area was unfamiliar. Shops closed, lights off. He checked the time. Late. He found a small takeaway, lights on, warmth visible through the window. Inside, the smell of fried food hit him, comforting. He ordered quickly, without looking at the price. At the counter, he tapped his card. Declined. The cashier looked up, tried again. Declined. Oliver laughed awkwardly. That's odd. He tried another card. Same result. The cashier waited, impatient now. He checked his phone. No signal. Cash only, the cashier said. Oliver stepped aside, heart pounding. He checked his wallet, counted again. Not enough. He apologized, left empty-handed. Back outside, the rain felt colder. He walked on. His phone buzzed again. Another notification. Electricity account. Low balance. He ignored it. 10 minutes later, another. Urgent. He dismissed it. He reached the flat. The hallway light flickered, then went out. Inside, darkness. He fumbled for the switch. Nothing. He tried another room. Nothing. His phone screen lit the space briefly. A final message appeared. Supply disconnected. The silence that followed was absolute. No hum, no background noise, no warmth. He stood there, soaked, hungry and cold. He sat down on the sofa, checked his phone again. Messages from his mother, missed calls, voicemails. He did not open them. He stared at the dark ceiling. For the first time, there was nowhere to go, nothing to tap, no one to call. The rain continued outside, slow, relentless. He lay back and closed his eyes, not to sleep, but because opening them did not help. In that darkness, everything he had assumed permanent revealed itself as borrowed. Access, convenience, comfort, all gone. And no one had raised their voice to take it away. The next morning, Oliver still put on his work shirt. That was the strangest part. It was wrinkled, still slightly damp from the night before, but he ironed it anyway, out of habit, out of denial. He told himself yesterday had been emotional, that things had escalated too quickly, that cooler heads would prevail by morning. People always said that in families like his wife's, arguments were dramatic, but consequences were temporary. He needed that to be true. He left the flat early, walked to the bus stop, waited longer than usual. On the bus, he stood near the door, did not take out his phone, did not check messages. He rehearsed sentences in his head. I think there's been a misunderstanding. I'd like to speak to HR. Let's keep this professional. The glass building came into view, familiar, imposing, reassuring. For years this place had given him a name. Manager, executive, someone. He walked into the lobby. The marble floor shone. The air smelled faintly of coffee and polish. Nothing looked different. That calmed him. He approached the turnstiles, reached for his access card, swiped. A sharp sound cut through the space. Access denied. He frowned. Swiped again. Access denied. A pause. People behind him slowed, watched. He tried a third time, harder. Access denied. The red light stayed on. Sir? A voice to his left. Security. Two men, black uniforms, neutral expressions. One of them held out a hand. Could you step aside, please? Oliver laughed lightly. There must be a system error. The guard did not smile. Your access has been revoked. The word landed heavily. Revoked. Oliver felt heat rush to his face. I work here. The guard nodded. I'm aware. That was worse. He was led away from the turnstiles, not roughly, not aggressively, just firmly. People pretended not to look. Some failed. He noticed who did not meet his eyes. At the reception desk, a cardboard box waited, plain, brown, unremarkable. His name was written on it in black marker. Inside were his things. A framed photo of him and his wife, the glass cracked. A branded mug, 2 pens, a notebook. That was all. 3 years reduced to a box you could carry with one hand. The HR manager appeared. She had always been polite, smiled at meetings, used his name. Today her voice was measured, distant. Oliver, this won't take long. She gestured to the box. All personal belongings have been cleared from your desk. He opened his mouth, closed it again. There has been a formal termination, she continued, effective immediately. He searched her face, looking for something. Regret, discomfort, sympathy. There was none. This is due to ethical breaches and misuse of company assets. He shook his head. That's exaggerated. She did not respond to that. You'll receive documentation by email. He laughed again, too loud. This is because of family drama. The HR manager met his eyes. No, she said calmly. This is because of documented decisions. Silence. One of the guards shifted his weight. We'll need your building pass, the HR manager added. Oliver hesitated. Slowly, he unclipped the card from his lanyard. The plastic felt lighter than it should have. He placed it on the desk. The guard picked up the box and handed it to him. "That's everything." Everything. Oliver stood there, box in his arms, useless card gone. The lobby felt larger now, colder. He walked toward the exit. Each step echoed. At the door, he turned back once. No one followed. No one called his name. Outside, the city moved on. Taxis passed, people hurried, coffee cups in hand. No one knew what had just ended. He sat on a low wall across the street, placed the box beside him. For a moment, he did nothing. Then he opened his phone. Messages would come, explanations, apologies. None did. Instead, a notification appeared. Company email access disabled. Another. Device permissions revoked. One by one, doors closed. He realized something then. He had not just lost a job. He had lost how the world recognized him, without a title, without a badge, without a place to walk into each morning. He was invisible. No authority, no credibility, no social weight. Just a man holding a cardboard box, sitting outside a building that no longer acknowledged his existence. He stood up eventually. The box felt heavier now. Not because of what was inside it, but because of what it represented. And for the first time, the truth settled in. This was not a misunderstanding. This was permanent. The divorce papers arrived on a Tuesday. Not dramatic. No raised voices, no arguments at the door. Just an envelope. Plain, official. Oliver stared at it longer than necessary. He had known this was coming. At least, he thought he had. In his mind, divorce meant negotiation, division, compromise, property split, assets shared. A final settlement that would soften the fall. He told his mother the same thing. "She can't leave me with nothing. We were married. I have rights." That word mattered to him, rights. What Oliver did not understand was that rights depend on facts, and facts do not care about confidence. The first meeting was held in a quiet office, no courtroom, no judge, just a table, files, people who spoke calmly. Emily sat on one side, composed, prepared. Oliver sat opposite, trying to look reasonable, trying not to look nervous. The mediator explained the process. "We'll begin with a financial overview. Nothing personal, just numbers." Oliver nodded. Numbers were fine. He had always believed numbers favoured him. The first documents were placed on the table. Bank statements, credit card records, payment histories, month by month, year by year. The woman leading the review spoke gently. "These are household accounts. These are individual accounts. These are supplementary cards." She paused. "All issued in Emily's name." Oliver shifted in his chair. "That's normal," he said. "She handled the finances." The woman nodded. "Yes. And that matters." They began with income, Emily's salary, consistent, documented, growing. Oliver's income, smaller, irregular, often withdrawn quickly. Then expenses, mortgage, utilities, insurance, travel, medical, daily spending. Line after line. What became clear was not a single shocking number. It was the pattern. Every major outgoing originated from Emily's accounts. The car payments, the holidays, the renovations to Oliver's mother's house, the luxury items, all paid for through cards issued to Oliver as authorised use. The mediator looked up. "Were these expenditures agreed in writing?" Oliver opened his mouth. "No. They were family decisions," he said. "She knew." Emily spoke then, for the first time. I knew they were happening. I did not approve them, and I asked for them to stop. Her voice did not shake. She slid a folder forward. Inside were emails, messages, calendar notes, requests, concerns, boundaries, dates, times, clear words. Oliver avoided looking at them. The mediator continued. In cases like this, she said, we look at contribution and authorization. She pointed to the summary. During the marriage, Mr. Harris did not contribute financially to household expenses. Oliver frowned. That's not fair. The mediator did not respond to fairness. She responded to evidence. Mr. Harris's income was used primarily for personal spending and third-party support. Third party, his mother. The number was read aloud, not dramatically, just once. The total exceeded what Oliver had imagined. He laughed, short, disbelieving. That can't be right. The mediator slid the calculator toward him. It is. Oliver's lawyer shifted. This changes the asset discussion. That was when Oliver understood. There would be no division. There would be accounting. The concept was simple. Money taken without permission is not shared wealth. It is debt. The mediator explained it in plain terms. If one partner funds the household and the other spends beyond agreement, the imbalance must be addressed. Oliver leaned back, suddenly tired. So what happens now? He asked. Emily's solicitor answered, We reclaim. Not punish, not revenge, reclaim. Assets purchased with those funds were identified. Receipts matched to statements. Statements matched to items. The car, gone. The house renovation, documented. Luxury purchases, listed. Oliver's voice dropped. You're taking my mother's house? Emily did not answer. The mediator did. The funds used were not hers. The property becomes collateral. Oliver's mother began to cry, loudly, inappropriately. No one responded. The room stayed quiet. This was not emotional space. This was factual space. The mediator concluded. Mr. Harris's claim to shared assets has been dismissed. Another sentence followed. Mr. Harris is liable for repayment of unauthorized spending. Oliver stared at the table. He had arrived expecting half. He was leaving owing. The final document was signed without ceremony. Emily stood up, collected her papers. She did not look at Oliver, not out of anger, but because the conversation was over. Outside, Oliver sat on the steps. His mother paced, ranted, blamed. The words blurred together. What remained was the understanding. He had not lost a marriage because of cruelty. He had lost it because he mistook access for ownership. And the law, unlike family, does not soften its conclusions. It counts, and then it closes the file. Life did not collapse all at once. It thinned, quietly, relentlessly. The flat Oliver and his mother ended up in was not dramatic. It was simply small. Low ceilings, a single window, paint that had once been white. They told themselves it was temporary, just until things improved, just until something came through. Nothing did. Oliver took the first job he could get. No title, no desk, no email signature. Manual work, early mornings, heavy loads. Long hours that left his hands raw and his back stiff. The work did not ask who he used to be. It only asked whether he could lift, carry, endure. Some days he could. Some days he could not. At night he came home exhausted, the kind of tiredness that does not lift with sleep. His mother waited for him. She no longer spoke about society events or friends. Those names had faded. Now she spoke about pain. Her legs, her chest, her nerves. She complained about the food. Too plain, too cheap. About the neighbours, too loud, too close. About Oliver, too slow, too weak. At first he listened, then he stopped responding. Silence became easier than argument. Money arrived weekly, small, counted. They learned the prices of things they had never noticed before. Bread, electricity, bus fares. Every decision required calculation. Nothing was casual anymore. Winter came early that year. The heating stayed off, coats stayed on. Oliver worked more hours, took shifts no one wanted. His body aged faster than his face. His mother grew smaller, not physically at first, but in presence. She stopped going outside, said the air hurt her lungs. She stopped calling relatives, said they were busy. She watched television all day, volume low, eyes unfocused. Sometimes she cried, not loudly, just quietly, as if afraid someone might hear. Oliver did not comfort her. He did not blame her either. There was no energy left for either. One afternoon, he came home to find her on the floor. Not unconscious, just unable to stand. Her hands shook, her breathing shallow. At the hospital, the doctor spoke calmly. Stress, malnutrition, exhaustion. Nothing dramatic, nothing urgent, but everything accumulative. She was discharged the same day, with advice, rest, better food. They nodded. They did not explain that rest costs money, and better food does too. Oliver took on another job. Night shifts, loading, cleaning. His sleep became fragmented. His thoughts dulled. He stopped thinking about the future. Thinking cost too much. His mother's world shrank to the flat. She needed help to move, to bathe, to eat. Sometimes she called his name repeatedly, even when he was in the room. Other times she said nothing at all. There were days Oliver resented her, not for the past, but for the present. Then he felt ashamed for that thought. Shame did not change anything either. They argued less. There was nothing left to argue about. One evening, as Oliver washed his hands in the sink, he noticed how rough they had become, cracked, scarred. He could not remember when that happened. He looked at his reflection, older, thinner, unremarkable. No one recognized him now. That was the strangest part. He was not punished publicly. He was not mocked. He was simply erased. The world had moved on. His mother slept most of the day. When she was awake, she spoke about the past, the car, the house, the respect. She repeated the same stories, as if repetition might restore them. Oliver listened without responding. He had learned that memory is not currency. It buys nothing. Sometimes, late at night, he imagined another life, one where he had said no, one where he had stopped earlier, one where he had understood that access was not entitlement. The thoughts passed. Morning always came. Another shift, another bill, another quiet meal. There was no lesson delivered, no speech, no final reckoning, just time. And time did not punish them. It simply revealed what they could survive and what they could not. That was the loop. Not karma as spectacle, but consequence as routine. Unnoticed, uncelebrated, permanent. Emily did not rebuild her life loudly. There was no announcement, no dramatic transformation, no sudden need to prove anything. She simply continued. The mornings came. She woke up, made tea, opened the curtains. The world looked the same, but it no longer pressed against her. The first weeks after everything ended were quieter than she expected. No arguments, no tension in the air, no need to anticipate another person's mood. Silence, for the first time, felt safe. She returned to work gradually, not because she had to, but because it grounded her. Familiar tasks, clear outcomes, effort that led somewhere. Her colleagues noticed the change, not in her clothes, not in her schedule, in her posture. She no longer apologized before speaking, no longer softened her ideas to make them easier to accept. She did not become harder. She became clearer. When decisions came, she made them without explaining herself. When questions arose, she answered only what was necessary, no more, no less. Her evenings were simple. Dinner at home, books she had once meant to read. Music played softly, not to fill the room, but to accompany it. She reorganized the flat slowly, not to erase the past, but to make space. Some things were donated, some packed away, some kept. Nothing was done in anger, only intention. On weekends she walked. Parks, side streets, places she had passed before without noticing. She learned the city again, at her own pace. Friends reappeared, not all of them, only the ones who did not ask for explanations. They spoke about ordinary things, work, weather, plans that did not involve survival. Laughter returned, not as relief, but as presence. There were moments, quiet ones, when memory surfaced. Not the worst parts, the small things, a familiar phrase, a habit, a shared joke. She allowed them to pass. They no longer demanded anything from her. Her career shifted gently. She accepted a new role, more responsibility, less performance. She did not announce it. She did not celebrate publicly. The work spoke for itself. Confidence followed, not as noise, but as steadiness. She began mentoring others, not formally, just listening, offering perspective when asked. She recognized the signs she had once ignored, the slow erosion, the borrowed certainty, the blurred boundaries. She did not warn, she shared experience. At home, the flat felt lighter, not emptier, lighter. She slept better, a deeper sleep, the kind that does not wake you with unfinished thoughts. One afternoon, she stood by the window and noticed something unexpected. She was content. Not happy in a dramatic sense, not fulfilled in a way that demanded witnesses, just content. Her life did not look impressive from the outside. It did not need to. It was hers. There were no updates sent, no messages delivered, no final statements made. The past had already closed itself. Healing, she learned, was not about becoming someone new. It was about returning to who she had been before she learned to shrink. Quiet strength did not announce itself. It showed up every day and stayed. That was enough. It was an ordinary afternoon, the kind that did not announce itself. Emily sat by the window of a small cafe, one she had come to often in recent months. Not because it was special, but because it was quiet. The glass was thick, clean, soundproof. Inside there was warmth, soft light, the low murmur of conversations that did not demand attention. Outside, the street moved at its usual pace. Cars stopped and started. People crossed without looking up. Life continued in fragments. Emily lifted her cup. let the warmth reach her hands. She had learned to enjoy small sensations. They stayed longer now. Across the street, something caught her attention. At first, it was only movement, a figure stepping back from the curb, someone waiting. Then recognition arrived, slowly, uninvited. It was Oliver. Not as she remembered him, not as he had once been. He stood near the crossing, holding a plastic bag in one hand, his coat too thin for the weather. His shoulders curved inward. He looked smaller. For a moment, Emily did not react. She simply observed. The traffic light changed. People moved around him. No one noticed. Then Oliver looked up. Their eyes met. It was brief, accidental, undeniable. There was no shock in his face, no anger, only something like confusion, followed by recognition. Emily felt it too, a flicker. Not pain, not triumph, awareness. In that second, two lives touched without intersecting. Inside the glass, everything was contained, orderly, still. Outside, everything was exposed, unfiltered, unprotected. Oliver took a step forward, then stopped. He did not raise his hand, did not speak, did not cross. The distance between them was not the road, it was time. Emily held his gaze for a heartbeat longer. She searched herself. There was no urge to explain, no need to defend, no desire to be seen. What she felt was not indifference, it was completion. She looked away first, not abruptly, not with force, just enough. She reached for the cord beside the window. The blind slid down, slowly, deliberately. The street disappeared in sections, light cut into lines, then faded. When the blind settled, the reflection appeared, her own face, calm, present. She turned back to the table, finished her tea. Outside, the city kept moving. Oliver remained where he was for a moment, then crossed with the others, blended in, unremarkable. No one followed him, no one waited. Inside, Emily stood, put on her coat, paid the bill. She stepped out into the afternoon, choosing a direction that did not require looking back. The glass remained behind her, clear, solid, closed. Some endings do not need words. They leave an aftertaste, quiet, lingering, enough. There was no moment when everything finally made sense, no grand realization, no sentence that wrapped the story neatly. Life simply carried on. Emily continued to live the life she had rebuilt. Oliver continued to live the one he had been left with. They did not cross paths again. Not because the world kept them apart, but because there was nothing left to meet over. What remained was understanding, not dramatic, not loud, just clear. In hindsight, the story was never really about betrayal, or even about loss. It was about permission, about how easily comfort can be mistaken for entitlement, how silence can be mistaken for consent, how access, when unchallenged for long enough, starts to feel like a right. Oliver had not taken anything by force. That was what made it so easy to justify. Things were offered, doors were opened, decisions were allowed, until they weren't. And when they closed, they did so without warning, without anger, without apology. Emily did not win. She did not triumph. She simply stopped giving. And when she did, everything that had been balanced on her quiet agreement lost its footing. There was no revenge in that, only consequence. In England, we like to believe that civility protects us, that as long as voices stay calm, damage stays small. But some of the most decisive moments happen politely. They happen in offices, in letters, in silences that are no longer filled. They happen when someone realizes that what they have been tolerating is no longer acceptable and withdraws. There are things in life that feel permanent because they last a long time. A role, a lifestyle, a position beside someone stronger. But permanence is not the same as ownership. Some things we mistake for rights are only temporary allowances, given, maintained, and quietly removed when the conditions change. The world rarely announces that moment, it simply moves on. And those who understood the difference continue forward. Those who did not are left trying to remember when the ground shifted beneath them. That is not cruelty, it is clarity. And in the end, clarity is what allows life to continue without needing to look back.